Hello, Rick.
Hello, Sharon. How are you doing?
Good, dear. Um, so the as we know, the last few weeks is quite sad to hear about people being scammed out of their homes. You go on vacation and think you have a home, or your mortgage is paid off and you're renting it out, and you moved into another property, and you find out you don't own the home anymore. It's been sold out from underneath you. And I think it's something worthy for us to talk about. We've both been in the industry a long time. We're known to not take shortcuts. We're known to pay attention to the details, and and I think when these things come up in the news, for sure, uh, it gives us a good time to re-examine our own policies and the things that we do, and to reassure our clients that how to protect themselves and also how we watch out for them. Um, so without me going into a whole lot more, I'm sure there's things I will add to it as we go along. But Rick, on the financial side, because people are after the money. Um, this scam stuff. I mean, I know that brokers and the mortgage brokers and the lenders, they're pretty big on identifying legitimacy in transactions. So I'd like you to talk a little about that legitimacy and things that you actually are required to do, or things that you do in addition yourself that help make sure that these transactions are what they look like. They're real, they're genuine, they're valid.
Sure. Well, because of course it's not just the sale of the house that happens, it's also people trying to get a mortgage on a house and
Right.
take the
That's
money
that's a
from.
good point. Yes.
Yeah, of course, the industry standard is we check IDs, and we compare the ID with the person to make sure that the picture actually looks somewhat like the person, because everyone knows like what driver's license photos and so forth can be like.
You pay attention to their signature as well?
Yeah, it should match if they've actually got a written signature. That is one thing we've been getting away from, though, unfortunately, because there's more just digital signatures, right? So you don't necessarily see ink signature.
Yeah.
Uh, but the other thing that I do is, like, I don't just usually get one ID. I usually get two pieces of ID.
Yes.
Then I will compare to make sure that everything matches, so that there's no
Right.
discrepancies between the two. Um, it's not really, it's important for people to take their own safeguards. However, it always amazes me. Like, you'll see a post up on Facebook, and it'll be like, what was the name of your first car and what street did you grow up on? And people actually answer that. And it's like, well, those are
True.
common bank security questions.
Yes. Yes.
And but you'll see posts, and like there'll be like 1,000 answers of, yeah, I grew up on Maple Avenue, and my first car was a Corvette or whatever, right? And it's
Yeah.
like, okay, well, now you just gave them half the information.
And probably a good chunk of a password.
Yeah. So I've actually known people that are victims of identity theft, and it's very frustrating, because that's all this is. Is this just another form of identity theft?
Yeah.
So you need to be very careful about you should, if you have any important papers that you're throwing out, well, I shouldn't say important papers, because then you would be throwing them out, but any papers you're throwing out that have personal identification on them, safeguard your date of birth, because that's a prime piece of information. Try not to, I mean, your address is going to be out there, because but try to when you get something mailed to you, you should probably actually be shredding, if you want to be on the safe side,
Right.
all the things, because your name and address are two key important pieces of information for, they've got that and they've got your date of birth, they could
Yeah.
potentially pull your credit, so
And the
it's,
social insurance number.
well, yeah, SIN, you want to guard that very closely. Actually, in a lot of places, you don't even have to give your SIN, but they ask for it. And yeah, social insurance number. So obviously, anytime you're dealing with taxes or T4 slips, if you're disposing of them, you should be shredding them. You can protect yourself by buying insurance. I mean, it's it doesn't protect you in that it's going to prevent the identity theft. What it does is, if you are a victim of identity theft, it will pay the legal costs and do a lot of the legwork for you in recovering.
That is the title insurance. Now, Rick, with that
Well,
title,
so I should clarify on that though, because there's two title insurance, and a lot of people are confused.
yeah,
There's the title insurance you have to buy when you get a mortgage that
yeah.
protects the lender, but there is an optional title insurance that protects you. The one that you bought because you had to buy it, I don't think that does very much to protect you at all. That's just to protect the lender. And that's more like if the insurance protects if the lawyer makes a mistake or whatever when they're.
I believe also that that title insurance does protect. I know there's additional insurance you can get, but
Mhm.
it does protect you against a lot of financial concerns, whether it's the lot size or whether there was something that I actually find out after that changes the value of the property. And there's an adjustment in the value of the property. So the insurance protects, the title insurance protects a lot of things that go on. So I understand that now on all the loans we do now that happens, but and they're protected with it. But for those that title insurance wasn't always a thing that a
Yeah,
lawyer
I don't think it
automatically added.
offers any protection for the borrower on identity theft.
Mm,
So having a mortgage on your property, of course, that's going to be a deterrent in some extent, because
mm,
obviously, if I'm going to commit title fraud, uh, I'm going to try and steal a house that's free, or steal the identity of someone whose house is free and clear of a mortgage, because
yes.
why wouldn't I want to walk away with the full $1 million or whatever instead of the
And to that point also, because they are looking for homes that are mortgage free, if their mortgage is paid off,
mhm.
my understanding is all they need to do is to put a credit line on the house. They don't need to use the credit line, but by having that credit line there, that it also has to be cleared. So there's some notification to them
You
that 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 there's something happening on their house.
Yes, if it's a HELOC, meaning a home equity line of credit, because of course
Yeah,
it can be a line of credit that's not secured.
yeah,
But if it's a HELOC, then it's registered the same as a mortgage.
yeah,
And when you get your when the lawyer goes to transfer title, they will have to discharge any thing that's registered against the ownership of the property and
right,
give free and clear title to the buyer.
yeah.
So yes, the financial institution would definitely be contacted in order to get a payout statement in order to discharge any debts like a HELOC.
So
Um,
should they charge something, or like even carry $100 debt on the HELOC or something, or does it matter?
I don't think it matters, because the lawyer will have, I'm pretty sure the lawyer would have to do a payout statement
Yeah,
in order to do that. And yeah, the financial. So if there is some debt owing, then of course, and it's actually not a bad way to build up your credit rating, because if you have credit and you use it and then pay it off, and it's certainly better to carry debt on a HELOC than it is to carry it on credit cards. So if you're carrying a
yeah,
balance on your credit cards, it's just financially wise to have a HELOC in place, anyways.
yeah.
But yes, if you use a HELOC, then yes, that would because of course, they would have to discharge the debt. Now, of course, the person that's pretending to be you could potentially, if they were somehow to, but assuming that the contact information is with the bank is your contact information, then they would send that to you to say, hey, or your lawyer
Yes.
would. So I would think it could make things more difficult. Yes. So by having a mortgage there, it could. I'm not saying it'll definitely stop it, but it'll make things more
It's
difficult.
another
It's sort of like
deterrent.
having it's a deterrent. Exactly. It's like
Yeah,
having a club on your car. It's
yeah.
like, of course, it's probably not a very difficult lock to defeat, but it's going to take more time while the
But
guy's
criminals would take the path of least resistance still. And I
100%.
think one of the major concerns I have here is that if a mortgage is paid off, uh,
Hmm.
is probably also more of a senior population. And they may be like, debt free.
Hmm.
And so to me, like, like I think it's important to get the word out there for them that they can still be debt free and have that line of credit on their house as a means of protection. It's just another path. It's something else they have to cut through.
Mhm.
And if you take the number of homes that have been sold in the last year and you think, okay, well, there were 30 of them that were victims of fraud. Now, that's not a large number, but it sure is painful for those 30 homeowners and the 30 people that bought that house innocently from the people that were fraudulently selling them. So we've affected 60, people plus, whoever else. We've affected their finances and turned their life upside down. So if a HELOC could prevent that, that's well worth it, right? Like, I mean, just a simple thing like
Well, I mean, it usually doesn't cost anything. Like
that.
there may be some minor fees to set it up in the first place.
Yeah,
Like you might have to get your house appraised or something like that.
yeah,
But yeah, it's not expensive and it's worthwhile having access to credit because you never know when you might need access to credit anyways. It's a far cheaper way to borrow if you want to do a home renovation or something like that to have a HELOC available to you.
yeah.
And
And
yeah,
if you're never going to use it, it don't matter. It's going to protect your mortgage. It's going to give you another layer of protection. It's an
yeah.
insurance in itself, in other words.
Well,
Uh,
I don't know if I go that far, but it does.
well, I'm saying that in the sense that it's an additional layer of
It's an additional layer
protection.
of protection. It's going to make it that much more difficult for them to commit
Yeah,
the fraud. But
I always think
I
it's
mean,
like someone coming up to your front door, right? If it's unlocked, they'll come in, but if they try it and it's locked, it's like, oh, go to the next one. We have
yes,
people going around the neighborhoods all the time trying out people's cars. If it's locked, that they carry on. If it's not locked, they help themselves to everything they can.
100%. And
Yeah,
it's yes, definitely the senior population, as you mentioned, is a high risk because sometimes they're not quite as savvy about some financial things or technical things.
and things
Um,
change so fast. And in even the last 3 years, we've seen a lot of things change, especially with digital interactions and people being isolated more. And a lot of people haven't really done well to come out of that isolation yet, and so they're even isolated even more now, right?
Yeah, it's and because of this, like it was probably coming anyways, but there's a lot more virtual sales
Yes.
and things happening.
Yeah.
So they don't necessarily have to go in person to register the mortgage at the bank. It might be done virtually, electronically. So unfortunately, I do think that makes it potentially a bit riskier when it comes to fraud. Um, but yeah, it's you got to do the best you can to protect your identity and pull your credit on a regular basis because unfortunately by the time they've registered a mortgage and it shows up in your credit, then it's probably too late. But a lot of credit theft, or sorry, a lot of identity theft also revolves around credit card fraud and things like that. They will apply for credit in your name.
Can
And
I go a little further on that? So they can pull their credit, but they
mhm.
can also put stops on their credit. So anyone that tries to do anything, that they can be notified first, right? Isn't there a plan now that you can buy to do that?
That there might be so last I looked in Canada, no, which is
Oh,
ridiculous. You can put like on the you can put an alert on your credit bureau saying that you're the victim of identity theft.
yeah.
But actually, yeah, I don't think there's any way to say, don't grant credit or, don't contact me before you grant credit or anything like that.
I
I don't,
thought there was some kind of
I think that's in
process.
the States that they have
Oh,
that.
wow.
But
Okay.
yeah, it's really it was very quite frustrating for the person whose identity was stolen because it was just absolutely ridiculous. Like Parliament needs to address these issues,
Yeah.
but
So
obviously,
these are things that we can actively do, especially in a financial industry where they're like fiscal thinking about the regulations they put in place and the things we have to do. This would be a minor thing to do to help people protect their credit.
well, it's ridiculous. Like this person that I'm not going to say their name because I don't have the permission to disclose their identity, but the person, or sorry, the financial institution that granted the credit and was sending out credit reports and things like that. because they went to one of those like get your credit free places.
Yeah.
It was like really hard to stop it once like you'd have to wait on hold for hours and hours to talk to the financial institution to tell them someone's stolen my credit. And it's like it's ridiculous. If you're holding yourself out there as a financial institution, you should be able to be contacted other than through email, like
Yeah. And
but
in a timely manner as well. So these things,
exactly. But
time is of the essence. The other thing also, so is their credit and all that stuff, and I guess obviously their social insurance number, they shouldn't be giving that out willy-nilly either.
no, not at all.
Are there any other red flags that, from your perspective, you would say to a person to watch out for, or any certain questions that you could ask them, or
So you mean for me checking to see if the person's who they say they are?
yeah,
For me to
yeah,
screen them for well, you can ask them, about the information on their ID when they're looking at their ID, sort of
yeah,
like a bouncer at a bar, like, what year were you born in again, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
if they have to look down to find that out, then it's like, So,
yeah.
but yeah, it's
Or postal code is
unfortunately.
a tricky one too, because eventually we all memorize ours, except for me, I move so much I can't
I was
remember.
gonna say, like the postal code. A lot of people don't know their postal code offhand. Like
Yeah.
especially if you move a lot,
But your
then
birthday, you do know.
like yeah, your birthday. You should know your birthday.
Yeah.
It's
You can ask
it,
for their passport as well.
well, so I usually look for two pieces of government issued photo ID.
Yeah.
So ideally, I get their driver's license and passport, but not everyone has those. So at a certain point, it's like, well, I have to have two pieces of ID. That's the minimum. That's the regulatory minimum requirement.
But you're
Um,
also getting copies of bank statements as well with their
well,
name on
that's the thing. I mean, there's so many statements that I need to go through to.
it. There's a
Having
property
said
tax
that,
bill.
someone that is, it's $1 million payday.
Yeah.
Someone can lie to the bank about their identity and open up fake accounts and so forth too.
Yeah.
But now, they also have to show that they've got employment income going into that bank account,
Yeah.
things like that. So now their employment name has to match. Now you can create fraudulent documents from the bank and so forth, but that's getting harder because now I can pull directly from the financial institution, right? So
Yeah.
unless they've successfully opened up a fraudulent bank account and are, having deposits go in through direct deposit under that fraudulent name. I mean, but so I'm sure that would be easier just to have the property sold in that case because I wouldn't imagine have to check, their bank account records when they're listing a property, right? But yes, I mean there is a lot of documents that I go through when someone is qualifying for a mortgage, and
Yeah.
that is precisely for that reason to prevent mortgage fraud. Now, usually they're looking for people that are who they say they are, but are lying about how much money they actually make or something. Because
Yeah.
the whole 2008 financial crisis was because people would say, "Oh yeah, I need a mortgage of this much, so I'll just say I make $200,000 a year or whatever," and no one checked it, right?
Yeah.
So now they verify everything,
Yeah.
but it's more documents. But yes, I mean, if potentially you're stealing $1 million, people are willing to go to a fair amount of effort to create fraudulent documents and fraudulent IDs. It's no system can be perfect. If you make it so that it's impossible to steal someone's identity, you make it impossible or extremely difficult for anyone else to sell their house or get a mortgage. Like, how many hoops can people jump through at the end of the day, right? That's the same reason that computer hackers can break into systems and steal all this information. But having said that, it boggles my mind when like some huge store gets like their consumers data stolen, and it's like, oh yeah, we'll pay for your identity theft for 2 years. It's like, well, all the information is out there now, so I don't see how after 2 years all of a sudden you can just walk away and say it's not my problem anymore. But it happens all the time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It does. From a real estate perspective, I will say that there's a few things, and it's certainly, I think, communication is still key. Talking to your clients, getting to know them. So as a real estate agent, I get to know the why of why someone is wanting to sell. I will ask to see their property tax bills as well. I will also I will also go into the systems and I will see, when they bought the house. So even before I meet with them, I'll
Mhm.
see when they bought the house. I will ask them if they are, like I'll ask them about when they bought the house and how long they owned it.
Yeah.
And it should pretty much line up with what I've seen online because I already know that information.
Mhm.
I never go see a client without seeing when they bought it, if it was transferred between family members at any given point, um,
Mhm.
and things like that. If it was changed because if they were widowed or something, I'll see all of that information kind of
Yeah.
to some degree. It tells a story more,
Mhm.
and I have that information, and I will talk to them about that. And I'll
Mhm.
say, so when like when they bought the house, so yes, there's multiple IDs, there's the tax bills, they're seeing their utility bills.
Well, the issue is, of course, if you're away for vacation, which is, I think, the situation, or they were living out of the country,
Yeah.
actually, in the
Or
situation.
one was renting a house out.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
if you live it, well, I mean, if you're a tenant, it would be pretty easy to steal your landlord's ID if the mail is still going to their house, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, because unfortunately, like, you can get those, you can steal those documents, right? If you have access to the mailbox. So
If
so
you
that's
do.
another thing. If you are away, make sure to put a stop on your mail until you're
Yeah.
back, so
Yeah.
that because
But even the
people.
tenant is unlikely to know when they bought the house, for example.
Sure.
And also, so there's certainly that. And I mean, there's certainly a lot to have a conversation about and a lot to look at and to do some due diligence. I mean,
Yeah.
yes, if someone wants to scam you, they're going to scam you,
Mhm.
but I would certainly be asking questions. I ask lots of questions. When I go in with my buyers to buy a house, I
Mhm.
look the sellers up online as well,
Yeah.
and see what I can see about them.
Mhm.
There is a lot you can do to look people up, look up their profiles online today, and see if they exist and what they look like. You can learn things about them, and as
Mhm.
soon as you can have a conversation then with them, So I think it's a challenge, like on the buying side, if you haven't met the seller. As a seller agent, there's lots we can ask.
Yeah.
On the buyer side, there's only so much because you're only buying it based on what you've seen, there, right? Like how do you verify the seller is who they say they are if you're on the buying side? Like on the listing side, it's easy for me to do.
Yeah, I would imagine that would be a whole nightmare for whoever bought the property as well, right? Because
Yes, it would be. Yeah,
it's I mean, your lawyer says that you've got free and clear title. You bought the title
yeah,
insurance that, as I said, is primarily to protect the lender, but I mean, I would imagine in that case it would also protect the buyer. But it would be like a whole nightmare of paperwork and so forth, because it's like, well, who gets the house in that case? Because
yeah.
it's like, well, I've lived there
It's
for
stuff
20
that's gonna.
years, and what happened to the contents of the house would be another big question, right? Because I'm sure that when they moved in, they didn't keep all the old furniture and so forth that the fraudsters left behind. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a huge mess. I don't see why they can't figure out a way to.
For the for the sellers also, there's one broker I know that uses an app called FinTracker.
Yeah.
And that fin tracker, I don't know if we can buy it individually. We probably could. I don't know the cost,
Mm.
but I know there was a broker that bought one. And if you run someone's driver's license through that, it tells you if that document is valid or not.
Really? Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you'd think that would be something that they would, just make a standard. Like it's.
Yeah, because I actually did one transaction recently and I ran it because it was a new transaction. The others, I had all their information and the FinTrack information already,
Mhm.
but they used FinTracker.
Mhm.
And I was pretty impressed. It was a little clumsy. I only used it once,
Yeah.
but they scan it in, and I still have a copy of their ID. But they scan it in, or if I have it, I can scan it in, and
Mhm.
it scans everything and tells me whether that driver's license, which is
Yeah.
at the middle of all of this stuff, and was the first thing I thought when I heard, well, why aren't they using something like FinTracker? And there must be more legitimate apps like that that brokers could vet and ensure that listing agents use
Yeah.
to verify that that ID is valid.
For sure. And it's not just the listing agent, it's also the lawyer in cases of both
Yes,
sales and mortgages. There is a lawyer involved that is the
they
gatekeeper.
should be using
To,
it also so that they
yeah.
can validate whether
Mhm.
that ID is phony or whether it's legit, because I don't know what their parameters are that they're putting into it, but I'm not a coder or programmer. So I would suggest that that is probably also something that can also be used.
Yep. Well,
Um,
using some form of electronic security, like, scanning the back of the driver's license.
exactly.
Barcode. I mean,
And
there is some things that I check on a driver's license that I'm not going to talk about
yeah,
right now
right.
because,
Yeah,
you don't want the general public to know the information.
that's right.
But yes, if you look at a driver's license, sometimes you can tell it's fraudulent pretty quickly just by
Yeah,
looking at the information on the front of it.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, unfortunately, you know, scammers often have a lot of inside knowledge, right? That's how they get
yeah.
away with it. They've worked in the system, so they know how to game the system. It's organized crime in a lot of cases. So there's,
It is. I'm glad that it doesn't happen very often, but once is too often. And
mhm,
I'm glad that I'm aware of tools and you're aware of tools that we can continue to use
mhm,
and to monitor, and our systems that we use to double check and triple check. And if something feels off, then you need to follow through on that red flag and clarify it, or the people will run. I remember when we had someone give us a fraudulent credit score, and and we decided it was fraudulent. Like, I remember having a conversation with you on that,
mhm.
and so when I talked to them about it and I expressed some concerns and suggested a couple of things they need to do to ensure that that's legit, they totally disappeared.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can't see how you wouldn't know that your
Right.
credit score is. Yeah.
So
I mean,
without
it's
calling them fraudulent, there were
yeah.
things that I had to do, a little bit of a conversation to have in a way that suggested that we needed different information and we needed to. So now I'm going to give you this form
Mhm.
and you will give me permission to pull your credit score. So if you don't want to sign that form and I can pull your credit score, I can't use what you just provided to me.
Yeah.
And they disappeared. So there are these things we do, we can
Mhm.
challenge. So it's not easy for all of them. And we can be, again, those extra layers by doing the things we do and continuing to embrace new ways of tightening up, our security measures even more than ever, more questions, doing what we need to do to protect our clients.
Mhm. At the end of the day, though, our clients need to be proactive because, the information, like you can do everything possible to protect your identity. And, some store or website that you've registered on loses your identity and someone out there, pays $1.50 or whatever for your
Yeah,
information and then they can
yeah.
steal your identity.
So
So it's a good idea to have the insurance as well.
true. And do your due diligence
Yeah.
with what you're doing for your protection. We're an online world. We're digital presence. Presence that's not going to go away. So certainly, people, yes, we need you doing your part, and we'll continue to do our part. And we'll just
Register the HELOC. I mean, why not?
yeah,
It really doesn't cost much, if anything. Uh,
exactly.
if you like the content of the video, please
Yes,
look
right there.
below and click on the like button, subscribe. We'll be generating lots more content. If you found this interesting, which we hope that you did, we'll have more stuff for in the future.
That's right. Thank you so much, Rick. Have an amazing day.
Thanks, Sharon. You too.
Take care
Good
now.
talk.
Bye
Good
bye.
chatting.
Yes,
Bye.
it was good. Thank you.